Montana Territory, 1876. The sky darkened to an ominous purple-gray as Owen Ellis tightened the cinch on his horse. A man of 25 years who had seen more than his fair share of frontier hardships, Owen cast a wary glance at the brewing storm. His lean frame, hardened by years of cattle work, tensed as thunder rolled across the distant mountains. Handsome in a rugged way, with clear blue eyes that contrasted with his sun-bronzed skin, he maintained only a hint of stubble across his square jaw. The other cowboys had ridden ahead hours ago, leaving him to handle the stragglers from their cattle drive. "Just you and me now, Ranger," he said to his faithful buckskin horse. "No sense in finding company. Never ends well for men like us." Owen had lived by one unwavering belief since watching his father die defending their small homestead from raiders 6 years prior. Attachment was weakness. The frontier demanded solitude. Love was a luxury men like him could not afford. Better to drift from outfit to outfit, taking work where he could find it, keeping relationships as shallow as prairie creek beds in August. The first fat raindrops began to fall as he spotted a lone wagon along the muddy track ahead, its canvas covering whipping violently in the strengthening wind. Owen sighed. He could ride past. It wasn't his concern, but something made him rein Ranger toward the stranded traveler. Probably just his conscience, that irritating remnant of his mother's teachings that never quite left him. As he approached, a young woman emerged from behind the wagon, struggling to calm a panicked horse that had slipped its harness. Her dark golden hair, partially escaped from its pins, whipped about her face. She wore a practical blue traveling dress, now spattered with mud, but it did little to diminish her natural beauty. Even from a distance, Owen could see the determination in her stance as she fought against both frightened animal and gathering storm. "Need some help, miss?" he called over the rising wind. The woman turned, revealing striking green eyes and a face that couldn't have seen more than 22 summers. Relief washed over her features. "Thank heavens," she shouted back. "My wheel cracked, and now Perseus here is threatening to bolt entirely." Owen dismounted in one fluid motion, quickly assessing the situation. The wagon wheel had indeed split, the horse was seconds from breaking free, and the storm was closing in fast. The rational part of him, the part that had kept him alive this long, warned that this was exactly the kind of entanglement he avoided. A stranded woman meant responsibility, conversation, perhaps even expectation. Yet as lightning split the sky and the woman flinched but held her ground with the frightened horse, Owen found himself stepping forward rather than retreating. "I'm Owen Ellis," he said, taking the reins from her hands. "And you've picked a mighty poor day for traveling alone." "Delilah Norton," she replied, a hint of defiance flashing through her concern. "And believe me, Mr. Ellis, I wouldn't be out here if I had any choice in the matter." The sky opened up then, rain pouring down in sheets. Owen quickly secured the nervous horse while Delilah gathered what essentials she could from the wagon. "There's a line shack about a mile back," Owen shouted over the storm. "Can you ride?" Delilah nodded, clutching a small carpet bag to her chest. "Good," he said, helping her mount behind him on Ranger. "Hold tight." As her arms wrapped around his waist, Owen felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. This was precisely the complication he didn't need. Yet as they rode through the downpour toward shelter, the warmth of another human being pressed against his back seemed to thaw something frozen inside him. Something he'd thought long dead. The line shack was little more than 4 walls, a roof, and a small stove, but it was dry. Owen quickly got a fire going while Delilah wrung water from her hair and skirts. In the warm light of the lantern he'd lit, her features were even more striking. High cheekbones, a determined chin, and those remarkable green eyes that seemed to look straight through a person. "You saved me out there," she said, warming her hands by the stove. "I truly thank you, Mr. Ellis." Owen busied himself with arranging the sparse supplies in the shack, uncomfortable with gratitude. Anyone would have done the same. "No," Delilah said firmly. "They would not. I've been traveling for 3 weeks now. I know the difference between common decency and uncommon kindness." Her directness caught him off guard. Most women he encountered were either working girls in saloons or proper town ladies who spoke in careful, measured tones. Delilah Norton seemed to be neither. "What brings you out to this territory alone?" he asked, curious despite himself. "It's no place for a woman without escort." A flash of something, pain, perhaps, or determination, crossed her face. I'm headed to Clearwater to take a position as the new schoolteacher. My father passed last winter, and there's nothing left for me back east. Owen nodded, understanding loss all too well. Sorry about your father. Life happens as it will, she replied, a philosophical note in her voice that surprised him. We can only choose how we respond to it. Outside, the storm raged, rain hammering against the roof and walls like 1,000 tiny fists. Inside, something equally powerful was brewing, a connection Owen had neither sought nor welcomed, yet couldn't seem to resist. They talked through the evening, sharing the simple meal Owen prepared from his provisions. Delilah spoke of growing up in Pennsylvania, of teaching children in a small-town school, of dreams that extended beyond the confines of proper society. Owen found himself telling her about his years working cattle drives, about the big sky country he'd grown to love despite its harshness, even about the family he'd lost. "And you've been alone since then?" she asked softly. Owen stared into the dancing flames of the stove. "Safer that way. Out here, connections are just future losses waiting to happen." Delilah was quiet for a long moment. "That sounds terribly lonely, Mr. Ellis." "Owen," he corrected automatically, then wondered why he cared what she called him. "Owen," she repeated, and somehow his name sounded different on her lips. "I think perhaps the storm did us both a favor tonight." He looked up, meeting her gaze. "How do you figure?" "You needed to remember what conversation feels like," she said with a small smile. "And I needed someone to remind me that not all men are like those I've been fleeing." The admission hung between them, heavy with implication. "Someone hurt you," Owen said, not a question but a statement. Delilah looked away. "A man my father wished me to marry. After father died, he became insistent, forceful. I left rather than submit." Anger flared in Owen's chest at the thought of anyone threatening this woman. It surprised him, this protective instinct he thought he'd buried long ago. "Well," he said finally, "you're safe enough now, storm or no storm." When morning came, the rain had stopped, though heavy clouds still hung low in the sky. Owen assessed the damage to Delilah's wagon and found it could be repaired, though it would take most of the day. They worked together, Delilah proving surprisingly capable with tools and unafraid of the muddy, physical labor. "Most ladies I've met would be having vapors about now," Owen remarked as she handed him the tools he needed to fix the wheel. "I'm not most ladies," she replied simply. "And vapors seem terribly inconvenient when there's work to be done." By midday, a band of riders approached, the cowboys Owen had been traveling with, circling back when they realized he hadn't caught up. "Ellis, thought you might have washed away," called Foreman Jones, a gruff man in his 40s. His eyes narrowed when he spotted Delilah. "What's this, then?" "Miss Norton's wagon broke down in the storm," Owen explained, straightforward. "I'm helping her repair it." The foreman's expression shifted from suspicion to understanding. "Noble of you. We're heading to Clearwater ourselves to deliver this herd. She can travel with us if she's headed that way." Delilah's eyes brightened. "I am indeed bound for Clearwater." "That would be most kind." Owen felt an unexpected pang at the thought of her traveling with the outfit. These were good men, but rough, unaccustomed to female company. And something in him rebelled at the idea of handing over her safety to others. "I'll see Miss Norton to Clearwater myself," he heard himself saying. "Once her wagon's fixed." The foreman raised an eyebrow. "That means leaving the drive, Ellis." "Your pay." "I know what it means," Owen interrupted. "I'll catch up with you on the return trip." After the cowboys departed, Delilah approached him where he worked on the final repairs to her wagon. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "Cost yourself wages on my account." Owen kept his eyes on his work. "Promised to see you safe, didn't I?" "I don't make promises lightly." "Neither do I," she replied. "So I promise you this. I will find a way to repay your kindness." He finally looked up at her, struck again by the quiet strength in her face. "No debt between us, Miss Norton." "Delilah," she corrected, mirroring his words from the night before. Her smile was like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. "And whether you acknowledge it or not, I consider myself in your debt, Owen Ellis." They departed the following morning, Delilah driving her repaired wagon with Owen riding alongside. The journey to Clearwater would take 3 days if the weather held. 3 days that would change everything Owen thought he knew about himself and his place in this unforgiving land. As they traveled, something inside Owen began to shift. Delilah shared stories of her students back east, her voice animated with genuine affection for each child she'd taught. She spoke of books she loved, ideas that challenged conventional thinking, her hopes for the school in Clearwater. Her enthusiasm was infectious, her perspective refreshingly different from anything Owen had encountered in his nomadic existence. At their evening camps, Owen found himself talking more than he had in years. He told her about cattle drives and winter storms, about the beauty of mountain meadows filled with wildflowers, about stars that seemed close enough to touch on clear Montana nights. He discovered, to his surprise, that he could still laugh, really laugh, at Delilah's witty observations and the gentle way she teased him about his serious nature. "Has anyone ever told you that you think too much, Owen Ellis?" she asked on their second night, as they sat beside the campfire. "Can't say they have," he replied, hiding a smile. "Most folks accuse me of the opposite." "Then they don't know you at all," she said with conviction. "I've never met a man who considers things more carefully than you do." "Is that good or bad?" he asked, genuinely curious. Delilah tilted her head, considering. "Good, I think. Though perhaps sometimes you think yourself out of happiness." Her words hit closer to home than he cared to admit. He changed the subject, asking about her plans for the school, but her observation lingered in his mind long after they'd turned in for the night. On the third day, as Clearwater came into view, a growing settlement nestled in a valley with mountains rising beyond, Owen felt an unexpected reluctance to reach their destination. These days with Delilah had awakened something in him he'd forgotten existed. Possibility. But possibility meant vulnerability, and vulnerability was dangerous. Better to deliver her safely to town, ensure she was established in her position, and return to the life he understood. The solitary life that had kept him safe, if not happy. As they approached the outskirts of town, Delilah suddenly reined in her wagon. "What's wrong?" Owen asked, alert for danger. "Nothing," she said, then hesitated. "I just wanted to thank you properly. Before we arrive, and everything changes." "No need for thanks," he said gruffly. "There is every need," she insisted. "You sheltered me from the storm, Owen. Not just the rain, but from fear and uncertainty. You made me feel safe when I'd forgotten what safety felt like." Her words touched something deep inside him, a place he'd walled off years ago. Before he could respond, they were interrupted by riders approaching from town, a welcoming committee for the new schoolteacher, led by the town mayor. The arrival in Clearwater swept them into a flurry of introductions and arrangements. Delilah was shown to the small house behind the schoolhouse that would be her residence. Owen found himself accepting an invitation to stay at the town's modest hotel, courtesy of the grateful town council who credited him with ensuring their teacher's safe arrival. That evening, a welcome dinner was held for Delilah at the mayor's home. Owen attended, feeling out of place among the town's leading citizens in his trail clothes, but unwilling to leave just yet. He watched as Delilah charmed everyone with her intelligence and warmth, fitting seamlessly into this community that had awaited her. He should leave tomorrow, he told himself. She was safe, established. His job was done, yet the thought of riding away left him hollow inside. After dinner, Owen slipped outside to the porch, needing air and space to think. He didn't hear Delilah approach until she spoke. "Hiding from civilization already?" she asked lightly, joining him at the porch railing. "Just getting some air," he replied. "You seem to be settling in well." "They're good people," she agreed. "Kind, welcoming." She paused. "The mayor mentioned they're looking for someone to help establish a proper cattle operation for the town. Someone with experience." Owen stilled. "Is that so? He seemed quite interested when I mentioned your background." Her eyes searched his face. "You could stay, Owen." The offer hung between them, weighted with unspoken meaning. "Stay? Put down roots. Build something permanent." "I'm not much for settling," he said, the words automatic, protective. "Aren't you tired?" she asked softly. "Tired of being alone?" Before he could answer, the mayor called from inside, requesting Delilah's presence to discuss the school schedule. She hesitated, then touched Owen's arm lightly. "Think about it," she said, and then was gone, leaving Owen with thoughts more tumultuous than any storm. The next morning, Owen rose early, intending to leave before Delilah awoke. He had nearly finished saddling Ranger when a commotion in the street caught his attention. 3 rough-looking men had ridden into town, dusty from the trail and radiating danger. Something about their purposeful manner set off warnings in Owen's mind. He secured Ranger and moved closer, keeping to the shadows of the buildings. The men dismounted outside the hotel, and Owen overheard fragments of their conversation with the clerk. New schoolteacher. Norton woman. Which house? Ice formed in Owen's veins. Somehow, the man Delilah had fled had tracked her here. These must be hired guns, sent to bring her back, or worse. Owen didn't hesitate. He circled behind the buildings, making his way to the schoolhouse and the small teacher's residence behind it. Delilah answered his urgent knock, her hair loose around her shoulders, clearly just risen from bed. Owen, what? There are men in town looking for you, he said without preamble. I think they've been sent by the man you ran from. Fear flashed across her face, followed immediately by determination. I won't go back. You won't have to, Owen promised. Get dressed. Quickly. While Delilah prepared, Owen considered their options. They could try to outrun the men, but that would mean Delilah abandoning the position she'd traveled so far to take. Or they could stand and fight, but Owen was only one man against three, and he couldn't guarantee her safety in a gunfight. There was a third option, though it went against everything Owen had believed about survival on the frontier. It meant trusting others, becoming part of something larger than himself. When Delilah emerged, dressed, and carrying a small revolver he hadn't known she possessed, Owen made his decision. We're going to the mayor, he said. This town wanted you badly enough to bring you here. Let's see if they'll stand by you now. The mayor, despite being roused from his breakfast, listened gravely to their situation. His response surprised Owen. Miss Norton was hired in good faith, the older man said firmly. Clearwater protects its own. Mr. Ellis, gather Sheriff Donovan and meet me at the hotel. Miss Norton will remain here with my wife. Within the hour, Owen found himself standing alongside the sheriff and a dozen townsmen on the main street, facing the three strangers who had emerged from the hotel. Understand you gentlemen are looking for our new teacher, Sheriff Donovan said, his voice carrying in the morning air. Mind telling us why? The leader of the three, a man with cold eyes and a scar across one cheek, stepped forward. That's private business. Between her and her fiancé back east. Funny thing about that, the mayor interjected. Miss Norton has informed us she has no fiancé. Says she fled from a man who attempted to force her into marriage against her will. She's confused, the scarred man said smoothly. Women often are. We're just here to escort her home safely. She is home, Owen said, stepping forward. The conviction in his voice surprised even himself. And she's staying right here. The standoff was tense, the strangers clearly calculating their odds against the united front of townspeople. Finally, the leader made a fatal mistake. His hand dropped toward his gun. The sheriff was faster. One shot rang out, catching the man in the shoulder. His companions immediately raised their hands in surrender. Attempted murder of an officer of the law, the sheriff announced coolly. That'll get you a nice stay in the territorial prison. Your friends can join you for conspiracy. As the wounded man and his companions were led away, Owen felt a presence at his side. Delilah had slipped out of the mayor's house and now stood beside him, her face pale but composed. It's over, she asked quietly. It's over, Owen confirmed. They won't trouble you again. The relief in her eyes was quickly followed by concern. But what about the man who sent them? What if he comes himself next time? Owen looked around at the townspeople, nodding with satisfaction at how they had rallied to protect one of their own. Then he looked back at Delilah, this woman who had awakened something in him he'd thought forever lost. Then he'll find that you're not alone anymore, he said. The words felt right, true in a way few things had in recent years. That is, if you want me to stay. Delilah's eyes widened. You're considering the cattle manager position? I'm considering a lot of things I never thought I would, Owen admitted. All because of a broken wagon wheel and a storm. Her smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. I told you that storm did us both a favor. In the weeks that followed, Owen found himself doing the unthinkable, putting down roots. He accepted the town's offer to establish and manage a community herd that would help secure Clearwater's future. He purchased land on the edge of town, close enough to visit the schoolhouse daily, far enough to start building the ranch he'd secretly dreamed of since boyhood. And he courted Delilah Norton properly, with Sunday walks and dinner invitations and careful conversations with the town minister about his intentions. The transformation wasn't always easy. There were nights when old fears gripped him, when the vulnerability of caring for others, for her, seemed too great a risk. But each morning, seeing Delilah walking to her schoolhouse, greeting her students with genuine joy, reminded Owen of what he'd almost denied himself with his belief that isolation meant safety. Summer faded to autumn, and as the aspens turned gold in the mountain valleys, Owen took Delilah riding to his nearly completed ranch house. They stopped on a ridge overlooking the valley where Clearwater nestled, the late afternoon sun bathing everything in amber light. "I have something to ask you," Owen said, suddenly nervous in a way he'd never been facing stampedes or gun-toting outlaws. Delilah turned to him, her green eyes bright with anticipation. "Yes. When we met, I believed that the frontier was no place for lasting connections, that caring for someone only meant losing them eventually." He took her hands in his. "You changed that for me, Delilah. You showed me that even in the harshest places, perhaps especially there, people need each other, need love." He dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. "I can't promise the future will be easy, but I can promise that whatever comes, we'll face it together. Delilah Norton, will you marry me?" Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Owen Ellis. I will absolutely marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple gold band with a small emerald that matched her eyes, Owen felt the last of his old beliefs crumble away. The frontier wasn't about surviving alone. It was about building something lasting together. They married as winter approached, in Clearwater's small church filled with townspeople who had become friends. Delilah continued teaching, her students adoring the young teacher who brought fresh ideas and genuine care to their education. Owen established the town's cattle operation, his knowledge and fair dealings earning respect throughout the territory. The following spring, as wildflowers carpeted the valleys and new calves strengthened the growing herd, they moved into their completed ranch house. Delilah planted a garden that would eventually become famous throughout the county, filling their home with fresh vegetables and flowers that seemed to defy the harsh Montana climate. Years passed, the ranch prospered, and their family grew. First with a son who had Owen's blue eyes and Delilah's determination, then twin daughters who inherited their father's calm under pressure and their mother's love of learning. The Ellis home became known as a place of warmth and welcome, a gathering point for community celebrations and quiet support in times of hardship. On their 20th anniversary, long after Clearwater had grown from settlement to proper town, Owen and Delilah sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sunset paint the mountains in spectacular color. Their children were nearly grown now, their son working alongside Owen on the ranch, their daughters planning for university back east, but certain to return to the land they loved. "Do you ever think about that storm?" Delilah asked, her hand finding his as naturally as breathing. "The one that brought us together?" Owen smiled, the years having softened the hard edges of the young cowboy he'd once been. "Only every day," he admitted. "I rode into that storm a man convinced he needed no one. You showed me how wrong I was." Delilah leaned against his shoulder, the silver now threading through her golden hair, catching the fading light. "You sheltered me from the storm, Owen Ellis," she said softly. "And every day since, you've given me a home I never thought I'd find. And you," he replied, pressing a kiss to her temple, "gave me sunshine for all my days." As twilight deepened around them and the first stars appeared above the mountains, Owen Ellis reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The frontier had indeed been harsh, demanding everything a person had to give. But it had also offered the greatest reward, not to those who faced it alone, but to those brave enough to face it together.